What happens when Hollywood's most enigmatic gentleman sits across from daytime TV's most merciless tongue? When grace and charm are met with mockery and contempt, the world watches dignity tested to its limits. This is the unforgettable story of Johnny Depp's appearance on The View. A masterclass in restraint in the moment he decided enough was enough. It was just another morning at The View. Producers moved briskly, technicians adjusted lights, and the audience buzzed with anticipation. Outside on West 66th Street in New York, a line of eager fans snaked around the block, waiting for a glimpse of one of Hollywood's most iconic stars. Johnny Depp arrived early, as was his way, with a soft smile and a quiet confidence. He wore a crisp black blazer over a dark vintage t-shirt, a scarf draped carelessly around his neck. His signature rings glinting under the soft studio lights. His long hair pulled loosely back gave him a roguish charm that seemed almost otherworldly. The crew was visibly charmed. Even the hardened stage manager cracked a smile when Johnny stopped to thank the lighting technician for making sure his seat was on his good side. Morning. Johnny greeted everyone warmly, shaking hands, offering compliments on earrings, shoes, ties. The other hosts, Sarah, Sonny, and Alyssa, drifted into the green room, laughing at his dry jokes and stories about his pet dogs, his guitar collection, and the most embarrassing line he ever flubbed on set. Even Alyssa, the newest and most guarded host, found herself grinning when Johnny complimented her on her necklace and asked about her kids. But Joy Behar was different. She was already on set, flipping through her notes, scribbling something furiously on her cards. Several times, staffers approached to ask if she needed anything, and she waved them off with a curt, "I know what I'm doing." When the opening segment aired, it was business as usual. Banter about politics, pop culture, and the latest viral scandal. Joy seemed sharp but unusually tense, cutting off Sonny mid-sentence and dismissing Sarah's jokes. The audience laughed dutifully, but a few exchanged uneasy glances. Something was off. Finally, it was time. Sarah turned to the camera, her smile radiant. "And now, please welcome one of the greatest actors of our generation, a man who's brought us unforgettable characters, and who's here today to talk about his powerful new film. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Depp." The crowd erupted. Johnny strode on stage with a relaxed grace, hands in his pockets, his eyes twinkling with mischief. The applause lasted longer than usual, forcing Joy to mutter into her microphone, all right, let's save some of that." Johnny smiled at her and nodded. "Johnny Depp, everyone," Joy said, plastering on a tight smile. "Thanks for gracing us with your presence." "Pleasure's all mine," Johnny replied warmly, extending his hand. She shook it quickly, then withdrew, her eyes narrowing slightly. Sarah jumped in with the first question about his role in the upcoming indie film. Johnny's face lit up. He leaned forward, describing the broken, beautiful character he portrayed. A man who'd lost everything and found himself again through unexpected friendships. His passion was contagious. The audience listened intently. The hosts visibly moved. Sonny complimented his honesty and asked if the role felt personal. Johnny paused thoughtful. "I think anyone who's ever been misunderstood," he said softly, "or written off too soon can relate. So, yes, in a way, it's personal." The audience murmured appreciatively, but Joy leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Personal, huh?" she said, just loud enough to cut through the applause. "That's convenient because for someone who's lived such a public, let's call it a complicated life, you seem very good at making yourself the victim in every story." The air left the room. Johnny blinked, then tilted his head slightly as though he hadn't heard. But he had, I think, he began evenly. We've all been victims at one time or another. What matters is who we become after. Joy smirked, shaking her head. Or who you convince people you've become. The audience laughed nervously. Johnny merely smiled faintly and said nothing, but that smile seemed to infuriate her more. By the time the second segment began, the energy in the room had shifted, the air felt thicker, the laughter more forced. Johnny sat with perfect posture, hands clasped lightly on the table. He still smiled, but there was a quiet steel behind his eyes now. Sarah tried valiantly to redirect. So, Johnny, she began brightly, this film also explores themes of redemption. Was that something you felt was important to bring to audiences right now? Johnny leaned in, grateful for the question. Absolutely, he said. We're all capable of rebuilding. That's what makes us human. The audience applauded softly, but Joy cut through it. Redemption, she scoffed. That word gets thrown around a lot, doesn't it? You break things, then claim redemption, then break them again. Johnny froze for the briefest moment before replying. I believe, he said, voice steady, that falling and rising are part of the same journey. Joy wasn't done. Sure, she said with an exaggerated shrug, but some people just keep falling, don't they? Some people leave a trail of hurt behind them, no matter how many times they say, I'm sorry. Johnny finally turned to look at her fully, his brown eyes cool but unreadable. We all leave trails, he said softly. What matters is where they lead. Joy laughed humorlessly. Oh, very poetic, she said. Maybe you should try that line on your ex-wives. There was a collective gasp. Johnny's jaw flexed almost imperceptibly, but his tone never wavered. Some things, he said quietly, are better left off this table. Joy leaned forward, her voice dropping. Why, man? Because you don't want people to remember the truth, you don't want them to see past the carefully crafted persona. Johnny straightened his jacket. I think people are smart enough to see what they need to see. But Joya pushed further. People see what you show them, Johnny, she sneered. And you've shown them pain, lawsuits, and drama. So tell me, why should anyone believe this redemption act of yours? Johnny studied her for a long moment, then replied in a low measured voice, because it's not an act. The third segment opened with the studio practically buzzing from the tension. Even the audience, usually full of energy, was subdued now, as though they too felt the gravity of what was unfolding. Johnny clasped his hands tighter, his knuckles turning white. Joy's relentless jabs had begun to crack his carefully maintained calm. Still, he remained seated, determined to maintain his dignity. Joy flipped her cards impatiently. You know what really bothers me, she began. It's that you expect sympathy when you've hurt people. Johnny's head tilted slightly. I've never asked for sympathy. Oh, please, she scoffed. You show up in scarves and jewelry like some tragic hero, spinning tales of how hard it's been. Johnny chuckled dryly. Scarves don't tell stories. People do. Joy narrowed her eyes. So tell the real story then, she said sharply. Tell us about the fights, the headlines, the courtrooms. Johnny leaned back, staring at her. I think you've read enough headlines for both of us. The audience let out a low murmur. Joy slammed her hand on the table. Don't get cute with me, Johnny. For the first time, Johnny's smile faltered completely. I'm not getting cute, he said, his voice low. I'm trying to have a conversation, but all you seem interested in is a spectacle. Joy barked a short laugh. Everything about you is a spectacle. Johnny rose slowly, the chair scraping across the floor. Then maybe, he said evenly. It's time for me to exit stage left. Johnny stood, adjusting his blazer with quiet precision. The room was dead silent, every eye fixed on him. Joy leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, smirking. "Oh, leaving already," she said mockingly. "That's what you do, isn't it? Walk away when things get real." Johnny's gaze swept the room, the co-hosts looking down at their notes, the audience members clutching their phones, the camera lenses recording everything. Then he turned back to Joy. "You mistake grace for weakness," he said softly. "You mistake composure for cowardice." Joy opened her mouth to reply, but Johnny held up a hand. "I've sat here and endured your cruelty because I thought perhaps somewhere under all that bitterness, there was a point worth making. But you don't want dialogue. You want destruction, and I won't be part of it." The audience began to clap hesitantly at first, then more confidently. "You've forgotten something, Joy," Johnny continued. "These cameras, they don't just capture the words, they capture the soul behind them." With that, he gave the other hosts a polite nod. "Ladies," he said gently, "my apologies for the interruption. You deserve better." Then he walked off, his footsteps echoing against the polished floor. Joy sat staring at the empty chair. Her smirk was gone. The studio lights seemed colder now, and somewhere beyond the cameras, the world watched as Johnny Depp reminded everyone that the loudest man in the room isn't always the strongest. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And there you have it. The day Grace met cruelty and walked away with his head held high. Johnny Depp's quiet dignity in the face of relentless attacks is a reminder to us all. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's strength. But what do you think? Did Johnny handle it the right way, or should he have stayed and fought back? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one of